two issues, both driven by shameless grab for power by autocrats, one international and the other domestic, straddle the 2022-2023 landscape. Russian President Vladimir Putin and former American President Donald Trump nefariously subverted international and domestic laws and norms. The egregious act of these two autocrats, though different in nature and impact, converged in the U.S. Capitol in the closing days of 2022. The January 6th Committee's investigations of the 2021 insurrection issued its final report, laying out indisputable evidence of former President Donald Trump's criminal culpability in an unprecedented criminal conspiracy to prevent the orderly and peaceful transfer of power and to engage in an assault on the iconic U.S. Capitol, home of the U.S. Congress. Ukraine's gritty president, Volodymyr Zelensky's historic visit to Washington to make the case for continued U.S. support for his country's defense of its sovereignty and territorial integrity. In a face-to-face White House meeting with President Joe Biden and in an historic address to a joint session of the U.S. Congress, provided a marker in U.S. history. These issues will be on the Washington and global agendas well into 2023. I am Ambassador Curtis Ward, and this is the Washington Report. Led by its chairman, Democrat Benny Thompson, and Vice Chair, Republican Liz Cheney, the January 6th Committee, after 18 months, 1,000 interviews, and holding 9 public hearings, issued its final report, an 845-page document filled with evidence backed by sworn testimonies and documents detailing Donald Trump's criminal conspiracy to subvert the American democratic transfer of power. For obvious reasons, it is not possible for me to delve into the details of the report, but I will provide my perspectives on its findings. Following an election which Trump lost by more than 7 million votes, 4 percentage points in the popular votes, with Biden receiving 306 to Trump's 232 in the Electoral College, America's archaic system of translating the popular votes by states. Trump repeated ad nauseam the big lie that he was fraudulently cheated out of an election victory. In pursuit of his fraudulent claim, rejected in some 60 lawsuits by at least 50 separate courts, including the conservative-packed U.S. Supreme Court, as lacking merit or standing. Trump repeatedly made his nefarious claim a central issue, and in the process of his conspiracy, drove a frenzied mob to attack the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021, to stop the Electoral College count, the final step in affirming the outcome of the election and setting the stage for the swearing in of Joe Biden as President of the United States. Trump's attempted political coup was unprecedented in American political history. His attempt to overthrow the election posed an existential threat to American democracy and the rule of law, reverberating around the world. Trump's ultimate defeat and future accountability should be a lesson to all autocrats and wannabe autocrats around the world who would seek to grab or hold power in defiance of the rule of law and democracy. There are valid criticisms of U.S. intelligence for failure to predict the threat to American democracy and the violent attack on January 6, 2021, and of the unpreparedness of law enforcement to prevent the insurrection. There were numerous reports of social media postings forecasting the possibility of violent actions by Trump supporters, particularly the Oath Keepers and Proud Boys, two extremist militia groups. Violent recourse, if necessary, to stop the Electoral College count was among Trump's objectives, while recognizing the lack of preparation and omissions by the Capitol Police and federal law enforcement agencies. The January 6th committee suggested, quote, the President of the United States, referring to then President Donald Trump, inciting a mob to march on the Capitol and impede the work of Congress is not a scenario our intelligence and law enforcement communities envisioned for this country. Prior to March 6th, it was unimaginable. Close quote. Unimaginable indeed that a normal sitting president of the United States would engage in widespread conspiracy to overthrow the results of a legitimate election in the bastion of democracy and the rule of law was unprecedented in U.S. history. I would argue that after 4 years of Trump's nefarious acts and iniquitous policies, his embrace and encouragement of white racist extremists and right-wing militias, his constant abrogation of the rule of law, his disdain for democracy, and his xenophobic and racist policies, nothing should have been unimaginable. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky's timely visit to the U.S. Capitol may have consolidated future U.S. support for Ukraine in the fight against Russian aggression. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who presided over her final joint session of the U.S. Congress, accompanied by President of the Senate, Vice President Kamala Harris, invited Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky to speak directly to the U.S. lawmakers and the American public on why it was the right thing for the United States to support Ukraine against Russian aggression. With anti-democratic forces within the Republican Party, particularly in the U.S. House, advocating an end to U.S. support of Ukraine, and a weak and gutless Kevin McCarthy poised to be Speaker, it was important and timely for President Biden and Democratic legislators, supported by some Republicans and a large majority of the American people, to demonstrate their support for Ukraine by sending a strong message of solidarity to Vladimir Putin and the international community. Under McCarthy's leadership, there is no telling the extent House Republicans will be influenced by the fringe and the crazies to try blocking future assistance to Ukraine. All of America should take note of Zelensky's historic address to the joint session of Congress, in which he emphasized U.S. support for Ukraine's defense is not aid, but an investment in democracy, the rule of law, and international law and order, and in European, American, and global security. Zelensky's message is exactly on point. Losing the war to Russian aggression would be a critical mistake for the United States and the international community. The implications would be grave for the future of international law and norms, the protection of vulnerable states to superpower egregious acts and territorial grab by force, threat to democracy around the world, and the protection of human rights everywhere would be challenged. The returns on the investment of which Zelensky spoke far exceeded the cost. America must stay the course. Victory over Russian aggression is the only option. Territorial integrity must be assured under international law. President Biden tweeted on December 21st, in Ukraine's fight against Russia's unprovoked, unjustified war, I'm proud to say they have not stood alone, and on my watch, they never will. I applaud President Biden for his resolute leadership on this issue. As I stated in the introduction, both the January 6th committee report and Zelensky's visit were brought together by the grab for power. Russian President Vladimir Putin grabbed for power over Ukraine, Eastern Europe, and beyond. His insatiable yearning for global power, and Donald Trump's grab for political power of the American presidency, and by extension, globally. In both cases, the disgraced actors, Putin and Trump, engaged in egregious and illegal acts. They violated norms, international and domestic, and unleashed a scourge on civilized society. In both cases, the disgraced actors, Putin and Trump, engaged in egregious and illegal acts. They violated norms, international and domestic, and unleashed a scourge on civilized society. In both cases, we are fortunate that Zelensky and the people of Ukraine stood fast against Putin's aggression. And Speaker Pelosi and the Democratic leaders in the U.S. House of Representatives have sought to hold Trump accountable. Speaker Pelosi, in providing the why for the January 6th committee, cited the oath which all federal elected officials take on assuming office to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and each office holder's pledge to well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office. Donald Trump betrayed this trust. He violated his oath of office. Nancy Pelosi decided to defend the U.S. Constitution, democracy, and rule of law. According to Speaker Pelosi, in furtherance of fulfilling this duty, The Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol was charged with investigating the facts, circumstances, and clauses that led to this domestic terror attack on the Capitol, the Congress, and the Constitution. The committee's investigation unearthed Trump's malfeasance. Speaker Pelosi lauded the leadership of the committee, who devoted themselves to this investigation, to uncovering the truth, and to writing a report that is a roadmap for justice. Derided over and over by Trump and other leaders of the Republican Party, the outgoing Speaker of the House had the final say. Trump's future now rests in the balance. One way or the other, he would be held accountable, if not by the judicial system, by the people of the United States, and he will reap rewards commensurate to his egregious actions. The people of Ukraine, though facing a cold and bitter winter and living under constant threat from deadly Russian missiles falling from the skies, I am optimistic they can be assured that America and the international community will stand firmly with them in 2023 in defense of freedom, democracy, against Russian aggression, and for the territorial integrity of Ukraine. Speaker Pelosi relinquishes the gavel and leadership of the Congressional Democratic Caucus, as these two issues of great importance to the preservation of democracy in the United States and globally converged. I'm Ambassador Curtis Ward, bringing you this episode of the Washington Report.